Well, thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us here at Brookings today.
Thank you.
As we just discussed in our event on No End in Sight, the regional dimensions of the Syrian crisis, we're coming up on the 3rd anniversary of the civil war and the displacement crisis that's accompanied that. So we're very glad to have the chance to get your thoughts on this issue. Perhaps we could open up with your perspectives on what the crisis has meant for the region and for Iraq in particular.
The key issue for the Syrian crisis is that at this moment, as the title of the event, there's no end in sighting, which means that we need to work harder to try to put an end to the suffering of the refugees and provide a better narrative as to the political outlook to the situation. Geneva too has provided us with an opportunity. I'm not sure how much we're going to grab that opportunity within the players of the region and international players, and also how much clear understanding is taking place to the prolongness of the suffering of the refugees. The substantial number of refugees displaced within Syria and overseas means that the prolonged pain of trying to get a resolution and peace in Syria for the long period. The diversity of the background of the refugees also unfortunately means that all walks of life of Syrians have been adversely impacted, and it will take a substantial amount of effort, international effort and local effort and regional effort, to get to some kind of stability and reasonable or predictability of the Syrian situation.
So at the moment there are some 220,000 Syrian refugees who are in Iraq, and then of course there are thousands of refugees from Iraq in the neighboring countries, in addition to those who are displaced within Iraq itself. Could you speak to the ways in which Iraq's experience with displacement at home has shaped the response to the crisis now in Syria?
We as a government are fully aware. We also have one of the ministries to focus on that as well, the migrations and the ministry. We're fully aware of the issues. We're fully aware that some of the issues can only be resolved by financial aid. Others requires more coordination. Others requires an international resolution, such as the Syria one. Internally, we had an issue since, I would say, since the first Gulf War, actually, since 1990, with regard to internal displacements. That prolongedness has not helped us in trying to resolve the political situation in Iraq, and that prolongedness has also impacted our understanding of the key players to be able to work together closely to resolve that. So we've had diaspora increase the diaspora size, for example, in Jordan and in Egypt as a result of that as well. So we are conscious and aware of that. We're also aware that some of the issues we need to get better in providing better provision and addressing the core issues of the long-term impact of that, such as the welfare, the psychological welfare, the education, the healthcare, and so on. So this is an ongoing issue for us. It provides us a challenge. We also have security concerns of the country, so the refugee is another dimension of that security concern as well. Unfortunately, the whole region is becoming more polarized, which means we need to be more proactive in addressing and preempting the situation.
You've mentioned that some 98% of the Syrian refugees who are in Iraq at the moment are of Kurdish origin, and that it's in many ways a local response from Iraqi organizations to the needs of that population. Could you speak a bit more to the local dimensions of that?
We as a government are conscious of that issue and have supported the local drive. It becomes more efficient, more effective, and people will not have the resistance of the government trying to impose something on them. So if people who are addressing the immediate needs of the refugees are from the same ethnicity or background, it makes it easier, and they have a better understanding of that. So that's where we're coming from. What we have tried to do is provide enough fund and enough capabilities of the government, and maybe more important, better understanding of that situation. The local impact of it has been primarily in providing humanitarians, looking after their colleagues, and which meant that 70% of those 98% are not in the camps. So they have a more normal life. The key question is how sustainable is this, and how prolonged is this? As our colleague earlier talked about the Turkish example, we're trying to think about providing more citizenship than others. The sooner we can see at the end of the light, the more conscious we would be as to how we can get a closure on this issue.
And I think that this issue points to the role of the international community in terms of bringing some form of resolution, if possible, to the conflict, in terms of supporting a sustained response in the longer term. Could you speak to the ways in which you think the international response could be improved for the Syrian refugees?
If I summarize the current political situation in Syria as though it's a war of attrition between the various stakeholders, with no clarity as to how do we close or dry the wells of that attrition, which is to do with funding, to do with weapons, to do with political support, media support, and so on. That has to become a priority. You have jihadis from various countries of the world are sort of hovering into or coming into Syria. That has to have a stop as well. That requires international cooperation between in terrorism, counterterrorism studies and research and work on that. So you need to resolve that issue as well. You also have to get the international political parties to realize that they need to work with each other to resolve this issue. And saying that status quo has to prevail is not a solution. We have to recognize each other. As I said in my comment, all the stakeholders have to realize they need to be on the table, they cannot impose, and they need to give and take away when they go to the table in discussion, whether it's Geneva II or any other formula. And at this moment we're promoting Geneva II because that's the only name, or that's the only game in town. Great.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for taking the time to share your perspectives today.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity.